You're being manipulated right now. There's this psychological trick so deeply wired into your brain that it's quietly dictating your money, your relationships, and your everyday choices. It happens completely under the radar. Honestly, by the time you realize it's happening, the trap is already snapped shut. In this explainer, we're going to uncover the hidden science behind why your brain is constantly being hijacked. Let's try a quick thought experiment. If I walked up to you on the street right now, completely out of nowhere, and offered you a basic coffee mug for 500 rupees, you'd almost certainly say no. You'd probably laugh and walk away, right? It feels far too expensive for just a simple, plain cup.
But what if, instead, I first showed you this absolutely stunning, limited edition luxury mug, and I casually tell you it costs 10,000 rupees? You process that huge number, it kind of just sits there, heavy in your mind.
Then I take that luxury mug away and immediately offer you a different, still very nice mug for 2,000 rupees. Suddenly, it doesn't seem terribly expensive anymore. In fact, compared to 10,000 rupees, it feels like a total bargain. But here is the terrifying truth about human psychology. Nothing about that second mug changed. Its intrinsic value is exactly the same. The only thing that changed was your brain.
Part 1, the showroom trap. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world. Meet Rohan. He's painstakingly saved his money for 3 whole years to buy his very first car. He is prepared, and he swears to himself that he will absolutely not be fooled by some smooth-talking salesperson. So Rohan confidently struts into a premium showroom. Almost immediately, a smiling salesman approaches and presents a top-of-the-line, fully loaded model, casually mentioning an absurdly high price, 28 lakh rupees. Knowing his limits, Rohan just laughs it off. It's way out of his budget. But the salesman? He just smiles, completely unbothered. Because then, the salesman calmly walks him across the showroom floor to another car and introduces a lower price, 18 lakh rupees. And boom, this is where the trap closes. Without Rohan even realizing it, a number that sounded absolutely impossible just 10 minutes ago suddenly feels completely reasonable. The car didn't magically become cheaper. Rohan's perception was just manipulated. Part 2, your brain's secret shortcut. Before Rohan commits his hard-earned savings, we really need to look under the hood at the underlying mechanics of his mind. Why did his perception shift so dramatically? Well, it all comes down to heuristics. Our brains are incredibly powerful, sure, but they're also kind of lazy. To save precious mental energy, they process millions of pieces of information every single second using these psychological shortcuts. And while they're incredibly useful for keeping us alive, they're the exact same vulnerabilities used to quietly hack our choices.
See, Rohan just fell victim to one of the most dangerous heuristics psychologists have ever discovered. It's called the anchoring bias. This happens when your brain unconsciously grabs onto the very first number or idea it encounters and uses it as an absolute reference point. Instead of evaluating that 18 lakh car from scratch based on its actual market worth, Rohan's brain used that impossible 28 lakh car as a massive mental anchor. Everything that followed was warped by that initial weight.
Part 3, the wheel experiment. Now you might be thinking this is just some cheap retail trick that wouldn't actually work on you in a clinical setting. But a fascinating scientific experiment proved otherwise, using literally nothing but a random spinning wheel and a completely unrelated geography question. Researchers spun a wheel right in front of participants. For some, the wheel landed on 10, for others, 65. Then, they asked the participants to guess the percentage of African countries in the United Nations. And the results? Absolutely staggering. People who saw the random wheel land on 65 guessed significantly higher percentages than those who saw it land on 10. Think about that for a second. The wheel had absolutely nothing to do with geography, yet that completely meaningless first number entirely hijacked their human logic.
Part 4, anchors in everyday life.
Once you know what to look for, you will see this cognitive trap everywhere. Walk into literally any clothing store, and you'll see a crossed-out original price sitting right next to a flashy sale price. They are giving you a high anchor on purpose, so the sale feels like an absolute steal, regardless of what the jacket actually costs to make. It's the exact same reason a restaurant puts a ridiculously expensive steak at the very top of the menu, or why a real estate agent shows you an overpriced, rundown house right before showing you the one they actually want you to buy. Your brain obsesses over the contrast and completely forgets to assess the true value. And hey, this bias doesn't just apply to numbers. It completely manipulates our first impressions of people, too. In fact, throughout history, strategists and propagandists have used this to subtly shape public perception. Imagine you're about to meet someone new.
Depending entirely on which of these two words a friend whispers to you first, your brain will interpret the exact same person completely differently. If you hear smart, you'll eagerly look for signs of intelligence. But if you hear arrogant, you'll interpret their quiet confidence as plain old rudeness. The anchor dictates your reality. It even rules our behavior on social media. Your brain automatically assumes a video with 15 million views is vastly superior to one with 120 views before you've watched a single second of the content. We let the metric become our anchor for quality, allowing the crowd to set our expectations before we even give the creator a chance. In the corporate world, this is a known weapon. Professional recruiters use this in business and salary negotiations every single day. They know for a fact that whoever says a number first quietly controls the entire trajectory of the room. If a recruiter throws out a low number first, your brain just keeps returning to it, making it incredibly difficult to argue for what you're actually worth. That first number doesn't just start the conversation, it sets the ceiling and the floor.
Part 5. Breaking the anchor.
So are we all just doomed to be manipulated forever? Fortunately, no. Back at the dealership, Rohan didn't actually buy the car that day. He remembered how his brain works. He hit pause. He walked out to visit multiple options. He compared prices across different dealerships. He actively ignored the salesman's first offers, and he did his own independent research. He forced his brain to evaluate the car's actual market value, completely shattering that initial carefully planted anchor.
Because he took the time to break the illusion, Rohan made a really smart decision, fiercely refusing to accept that initial number kept 2 lakh rupees right in his pocket. He realized that the first number presented to him wasn't the absolute truth. It was just a starting line drawn by someone else. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want you to remember one universal truth. Every single day, whether you're shopping online, walking through a mall, or sitting in a boardroom, businesses are fighting to give you that very first number or label, because they know that if they can control your initial perception, your money will naturally follow. So, the next time someone tells you what something is worth, or tells you who someone is before you've even met them, hit the pause button, step back from the situation, look at the anchor they just dropped in your mind, and ask yourself a terrifying question. Is your first thought actually yours? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay vigilant out there because understanding your brain is the only way to truly think for yourself.